Hi, everyone, and welcome back. The podcast where we break down real IELTS speaking material into practical steps you can actually use. I'm Maya Khan, IELTS speaking coach. Today we're doing a deep, practical dive into one of the most common IELTS topics, travel. With me is Mr. Luis Andrade, an applied linguist and curriculum designer who's analyzed real speaking tests about travel. Hi, Luis.
Hi, Maya. Great to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Luis Andrade. I focus on travel and tourism content in IELTS tests, and I love blending real travel stories with concrete language advice. Excited to get into this.
So, Luis, let's set the scene first. The speaking test is short, 11 to 14 minutes in total, but it's split into 3 parts. Part 1 is a quick interview, Part 2 is the long turn, and Part 3 is a deeper discussion. We'll walk through how travel questions appear in each part, give sample answers, and most importantly, show how to upgrade ordinary answers into high-band responses. Sound good?
Absolutely. And I'll flag common mistakes I see, especially with lexical resource and coherence. But first, quick reminder, travel is a favorite topic because it's universal. Almost everyone has taken a journey, even a daily commute, and it lets examiners test descriptive language, emotions, opinion, and some abstract thinking, all in one theme.
Right. And the scoring is always the same: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. You don't need perfect English. You need to communicate richly and clearly, and travel gives you the material to do that.
Yes. And from a test design point of view, travel questions can probe everything from simple narratives, like how did you travel here today, to higher level issues, such as over-tourism or the environmental impact of flying. So examiners can see whether you can move from personal description to abstract reasoning.
Okay, let's get practical. Part 1 usually includes short personal travel questions. I'll read a typical starter set. How did you travel here today? How do you usually travel to work or school? Do you like this way of traveling? Is there anything you'd like to change about your daily journey? Has your journey to work or school changed over time? Luis, how would you advise a student to answer the first 2 questions to show range but stay natural?
Okay, for how did you travel here today? Keep it straightforward, but add a small detail. For example, I came by subway because it's the fastest option during rush hour, and I usually use the time to listen to podcasts. That's short, natural, and you've added a routine detail, very exam-friendly. For how do you usually travel to work or school, you can expand slightly. I normally commute by bus. It takes me around 40 minutes door to door, and it can be quite crowded during the morning rush hour, so I usually bring headphones and read on the way. That shows specific vocabulary, commute, door to door, rush hour, and gives an anecdotal detail.
Perfect. Small details like timing and activities during the commute are gold. Now, let's role-play a short Part 1 exchange. I'll be the examiner, and you be the candidate. Ready?
Ready.
How do you usually travel to work or school?
I usually take the bus, which is convenient and inexpensive. It takes about 40 minutes. And during the journey, I often catch up on emails or listen to podcasts, so I try to make the most of that time.
Good. Short, natural. Now expand a little. Do you like this way of traveling? Why or why not?
I do, for the most part. On the one hand, it's affordable and I don't have the stress of driving. On the other hand, during peak times, it's pretty crowded and sometimes unreliable. Overall, though, I prefer it to driving. Less fatigue, and I can use the time productively.
Nice use of linking phrases. On the one hand, on the other hand, overall. That's exactly the kind of coherence marker that increases fluency scores. Now, let's move to a second Part 1 cluster, general travel habits. Questions like, do you enjoy traveling? How often do you travel? Do you prefer traveling alone or with others? What kind of places do you like to visit on holiday? Luis, what quick language chunks should students memorize for this cluster?
You want a mix of types of travel, reasons, and collocations. Key phrases: go on a trip, go on holiday, take a short break, explore a new city, get away from it all, travel off the beaten track, broaden my horizons, recharge my batteries. Also names of travel types: backpacking, package tour,
road trip, staycation, ecotourism. These are compact and easy to drop into answers naturally.
And add an adjective or two: scenic, picturesque, breathtaking, touristy, overcrowded. They help you avoid repeating nice. Now, let's move into part 2, the long turn. Travel cue cards are extremely common. Examples you'll see: describe a memorable journey, describe a tourist attraction you visited, describe a trip that went wrong. The core strategy is simple: background, main events, feelings, reflection. Lewis, can you walk listeners through a 1.5 to 2 minute long turn for describe a memorable journey you have made using that 4-part plan?
Sure. I'd start with background, when and where. I'd like to talk about an overnight bus journey I took from my small hometown in North Carolina to New York City in the summer of 2022. Then, main events, sequence the story, what happened first, then next. On paper, it was supposed to be a straightforward 12-hour trip, but halfway through, we had to stop unexpectedly because of a mechanical problem. We ended up spending the night in a tiny town and met some local residents who invited us for coffee. Then feelings. At the time, I was frustrated and tired, but by the end, I felt like I'd had a mini adventure. Finally, reflection. Looking back, the detour turned out to be the highlight of the journey, and it changed how I view unexpected delays. I now try to see them as opportunities to connect with people. That gives you narrative plus reflection, which is band boosting.
Yes, that adds reflection. Very band 7/8 flavor. Now, listeners, notice the time markers and narrative connectors: on paper, halfway through, by the end, looking back. Those cohesive devices help fluency and coherence. Next, sample cue card story grids. The research pack lists some classic story templates: long-distance train journey, budget flight with trouble, road trip with friends. I always tell students to pick a story in advance for each template so they're ready. Lewis, which of those story types most reliably gives you language to push into higher bands?
Long-distance train journeys and trips that go wrong are particularly useful. Train journeys let you describe scenery in detail, adjectives like scenic, breathtaking, picturesque, and let you use continuous tenses. We were traveling through the mountains when... Trips that didn't go as planned, like missed flights or lost passports, let you use contrast structures. We had planned to, however, plus past perfect and conditional language for reflection. Both formats invite anecdote and analysis.
Good. I'll do a mock part 2 on a tourist attraction now, and then we'll analyze. Cue card. Describe a tourist attraction you once visited. You should say when you went, what it was, who you went with, and explain what you liked about it. Here's my response. I'm going to talk about visiting the Great Wall. Well, imagine that. Anyway, I visited a section of the Great Wall a few years ago with a group of friends on a cultural trip. It was a historical landmark, obviously, and we went on a guided tour that explained the wall's history and strategic importance. What I liked most was the sheer scale. Walking along the ramparts and looking out across the mountains felt breathtaking, and the guide's stories made the ancient stones come alive. Also, although it was crowded in parts, if you walked a little off the main path, you could find quieter, more pristine stretches of wall, which felt almost like being off the beaten track. In short, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that made me appreciate cultural heritage and the effort that goes into restoring historical sites.
Nice. That includes sensory language and higher-level reflection, cultural heritage, restoring historical sites, and the idiom off the beaten track. Now, let's analyze it for exam criteria. Fluency and coherence, good sequence and connectors. Lexical resource, nice use of topic vocabulary. Grammatical range, you used complex sentences and contrast. Pronunciation, clear. One small tip, include a short specific detail like a year or the name of the section to ground it even more. It makes the story more believable.
Yes, a small concrete detail adds authenticity. And remember, listeners, don't invent facts, but small plausible details like a year or a section name make your answer sound real. Okay, let's switch to a part 2 that goes wrong, a great source of interesting language. Lewis, give us a compact 90-second story for describe a trip that didn't go as you planned and flag the high band language choices.
All right. I'd like to talk about a trip that went wrong, a beach holiday where the weather ruined our plans. We had booked a small coastal resort for a week, but a prolonged storm meant that boat tours were cancelled and the beach was unsafe. Initially, we were disappointed, but we decided to make the best of it. We explored museums and tried local cuisine instead. In the end, it became a culinary and cultural trip rather than a sun holiday. From a language perspective, that story allows you to use contrast. We had planned, but, and phrases such as cancelled, prolonged storm, make the best of it, and turned into the highlight. Also add reflection. Looking back, it was a blessing in disguise.
Exactly. And that idiom, blessing in disguise, is a nice band 7+8 phrase if used naturally. Now, moving to part 3, abstract discussion. Questions often expand into tourism and culture, travel and learning, transport modes, and future trends like remote work. I want to ask you a part 3 style question, Lewis. What do people learn from traveling? Give me an extended answer.
People learn a lot through travel, and it's useful to group the benefits. First, intercultural understanding. By experiencing different customs, food, and languages, people often become aware of their own cultural assumptions. Second, personal growth. Travel builds independence and problem-solving skills when plans go wrong. Third, practical skills. Language practice, budgeting, navigation. That said, travel isn't automatically educational. Some tourists stay within tourist bubbles and don't engage deeply. So a balanced answer weighs both the potential to broaden horizons and the limits of superficial tourism.
Nice structure. Pros, then caution. Use that model in part 3 answers. Present a clear argument, then a contrasting viewpoint. Now here's a tricky part 3 question you'll often see. Do you think people can learn more by traveling than by reading books? Lewis?
I'd say they offer different kinds of learning. Travel provides hands-on, memorable experiences that change behavior. For example, navigating a foreign city gives practical confidence you can't get from a book. But books, documentaries, and online courses also provide deep, contextual knowledge that some tourists never acquire. A high-band answer would combine both. Acknowledge the strengths of travel for experiential learning while recognizing that meaningful learning requires active engagement. Otherwise, reading might be more effective for historical or technical understanding.
Great. That's exactly the nuance examiners like. Now, let's talk vocabulary. We prepared a compact travel phrasebook in the pack. Travel versus trip versus journey, types of trips, accommodations, activities, adjectives for places and feelings, and tourism impacts. Lewis, what are the most common lexical mistakes you see with travel words?
2 big ones. First, wrong collocations. For example, people often say, I made a travel to Spain, instead of I made a trip to Spain or I traveled to Spain. Second, invented or awkward forms like touristical place instead of touristy place or tourist attraction. Also, overusing general adjectives like very nice, very good, rather than richer vocabulary such as picturesque, breathtaking, or overcrowded. Fixing those small collocation errors gives an immediate impression of higher lexical range.
Yes, collocation matters. Another frequent issue is tense confusion during a narrative. Students switch between past and present unpredictably. In a travel story, keep the story in past tenses and save present tense for reflections. Looking back, I realized that's more coherent. Lewis, do you want to give a quick band comparison using the same memorable journey content?
Sure. Band 5 answers tend to be short with hesitations and simple vocabulary. I want to talk about a trip last year. It was very good. We go by bus. Many things to see. Band 6-7 adds detail and some complex structures. I'd like to describe a journey I made last summer. It took around 12 hours, and although it was exhausting, it turned out to be quite memorable because. Band 8 uses vivid lexis, discourse markers, and reflection. On paper, it was supposed to be a straightforward 12-hour trip, but it ended up being a kind of mini-adventure that I still remember vividly. The differences are about cohesion, vocabulary precision, and reflection.
That's a succinct breakdown. Now, listeners, test day realities. Travel questions appear frequently across all parts. Examiners might link topics if you mention moving countries or travel for work. They also often smile and nod. That's normal. Being interrupted in part 2 isn't a failure. It's about timing. Lewis, any practical rehearsal tips for the long term?
Yes, practice a simple 4-part plan for every travel cue card. Background, main events in sequence, feelings, reflection. Time yourself so you can hit 1.5 to 2 minutes. Prepare story seeds for a few templates: best trip, worst trip, daily commute, dream holiday. Learn a mini phrase book of collocations and idioms, things like get away from it all, off the beaten track, travel light, jet lag. Practicing those templates will reduce long pauses during the test.
And avoid memorizing entire scripts. That can sound robotic. Use instructions and flexible phrases so you can adapt if the cue card throws you a curveball. Okay, let's do a live sample exam, a compact mock test. I'll be the examiner. Lewis, you be the candidate. Part 1 first. Do you enjoy traveling? How often do you travel? Where did you go on your last holiday? Ready?
Ready.
Do you enjoy traveling?
Yes, I do. I find traveling refreshing because it offers a change of scenery and a chance to reconnect with different cultures. Even short trips help me recharge my batteries and broaden my horizons.
How often do you travel?
It varies. I try to take at least one major trip a year, but I also do several short breaks and work-related trips. Budget and time constraints mean I plan carefully, especially for longer international travel.
Where did you go on your last holiday?
My last holiday was a short city break to New York City. I went with friends, and we spent the time exploring museums, walking through different neighborhoods, and sampling local cuisine. It was busy, but extremely rewarding.
Nice. Part 2. Here's your cue card. Describe a memorable journey you have made. You have 1 minute to prepare, then 2 minutes to speak.
Okay, I'll start now. I'd like to describe an overnight bus journey I took from my hometown in North Carolina to New York City in the summer of 2022. On paper, it was supposed to be a straightforward 12-hour trip, but midway, the bus developed mechanical trouble, and we were forced to stop in a tiny town overnight. Initially, it felt frustrating and inconvenient. We had missed our planned schedule. But the unexpected stop turned into a memorable experience because we met a few locals who invited us for coffee and chatted about local life. We also had time to walk around a quiet, picturesque main street that was far removed from the usual tourist track. By the time we arrived in New York the following day, the delay felt less like a problem and more like a serendipitous detour. Looking back, the journey taught me to be more open to surprises while traveling, and to appreciate that not everything needs to be planned to have value.
Very good. That's coherent with reflection and specific language. Mechanical trouble, serendipitous detour, picturesque, tourist track. Great choices. A tiny tip, a brief sensory detail, like the smell of fresh coffee or the sound of the town at night, would add another layer, but overall excellent. Okay, part 3. Let's discuss tourism and culture. Question 1. How has tourism affected your country? Lewis?
Tourism affects countries in multiple ways. Economically, it generates employment opportunities in hotels, restaurants, transport, and handicrafts, and can boost the local economy. Culturally, tourism encourages exchange and openness. Locals may learn foreign languages and interact with new ideas. But there are downsides: overcrowding, over-tourism, cultural commodification, where traditions get turned into performances, and environmental damage, such as littering and trail erosion. A balanced answer describes both positives and negatives, and, if possible, gives a short local example.
Yes, mention both economic benefits and the environmental or cultural costs. Next, part 3 question. What is the best way for tourists to travel if they want to learn about your country?
Ideally, tourists should combine a bit of structure with independent exploration. Guided tours provide historical context and safety for first-time visitors, while exploring back streets, sampling street food, and staying in a homestay or guest house gives a more authentic atmosphere. Trains and slower modes of transport are often better for understanding landscapes and rural life, whereas planes help you reach distant regions quickly. The key is active engagement rather than passively following an itinerary.
Good. That mixes transport modes with learning angles. Now let's zoom in on language again. We have a short mini travel phrasebook recommendation for listeners. Learn 20-30 essential expressions. Here's a suggested compact list from the pack. Go on a trip, go on holiday, take a short break, travel off the beaten track, backpacking, package tour, hostel, boutique hotel, sightseeing, explore back streets, sample local cuisine, scenic, picturesque, breathtaking, overcrowded, off the beaten track, get away from it all, hit the road, travel light, live out of a suitcase, jet lag, a change of scenery, a once-in-a-lifetime experience, boost the local economy. Lewis, any favorites you'd insist students master?
I'd prioritize collocations and a few idioms. Travel off the beaten track, get away from it all, travel light, live out of a suitcase, jet lag, and a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Practice them in short sentences so you can drop them naturally into answers. Also learn transport collocations. Take the bus, catch the train, fly with a low-cost airline, book accommodation. Those small verb plus noun pairs are essential and often misused.
Exactly. Now, mistakes to avoid, quick list. Wrong form of travel, I made a travel, invented adjectives, touristical, overgeneral vocabulary, very nice, tense confusion in narratives, article misuse, go to beach, and flat intonation. Lewis, tell listeners one pronunciation trap to watch out for.
Commonly mispronounced travel words include receipt, luggage, cuisine, vehicle, route, and island, especially names of countries and cities if you're not familiar. Practice those deliberately and use sentence stress and intonation to sound natural. Don't overcorrect. Clarity is the goal, not an accent imitation.
Great. Now let's do a final section, examiner logic and practical takeaways. Why do examiners use travel? Because it's universal and lets them test description, storytelling, emotion, opinion, and abstract reasoning. So prepare a small set of ready stories: best trip, worst trip, daily commute you dislike, a memorable tourist attraction, a trip that took longer than expected, and a place you want to visit. Lewis, give 3 quick rehearsal drills listeners can do at home.
Drill 1, timed Part 2 practice. Pick a travel cue card template and use the 4-part plan. Speak for 1.5 to 2 minutes, then record and listen for 1 repetition or filler word you can reduce. Drill 2, lexical swap. Write a short answer and replace 3 generic words with richer collocations or idioms. Drill 3, Part 3 debate. Pick a question like, should governments limit international tourism? And practice giving a point, then a contrast, and finish with a prediction using modal verbs like might, may, or could.
Those are actionable. One more practical exam day tip. If you can't find a word, paraphrase. Use simple language instead of stopping. For example, if you forget accommodation, say, the place where I stayed, and keep speaking. Lewis?
Yes, paraphrasing keeps fluency and shows lexical resource. Also, if the examiner asks a follow-up you didn't expect, keep the same structure. Give a short answer, then expand with 1 example and a reflection. That keeps coherence and shows critical thinking.
Okay, as we wrap up, quick recap. We covered Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 travel patterns, sample answers, a mock test, vocabulary, common mistakes, and rehearsal drills. Lewis, one last piece of encouragement for test day.
Don't over-prepare scripts. Prepare flexible story seeds and a phrase toolbox. Focus on clarity and storytelling rather than perfect grammar. Treat the test as a structured conversation where you can show off your best travel anecdotes and your ability to think aloud.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lewis. And thank you to everyone listening. Before we go, quick homework. Prepare 3 travel stories following the 4-part plan, learn 10 collocations from our mini phrase book, and do 1 timed part 2 drill this week. We'll put a transcript and the phrase list in the show notes. Any final words, Lewis?
Just good luck. And remember that travel questions are opportunities. Use them to tell a short, vivid story, add a reflection, and show you can use a variety of grammatical structures and collocations. You've got this.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of Speaking Smart. If you found this useful, subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other learners find the show. See you next time for another deep dive into an IELTS topic. Bye.
Bye, everyone.